Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed Khan. And again today we are talking about the Pakistan-US relationship, which direction it's heading in. And we here are quite perturbed about the direction that the relationship is going towards. And we would like to see it go in a better direction. So let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today we have Nasarullah Mirza Saab. He's a defense analyst. And along with him we have Fahad Humayon. He's with the foreign policy. He's a foreign policy expert with the Jinnah Institute. Thank you very much for being here, sir. Sir, we've been talking about this for the past entire week, ever since President Trump gave us his present of the new year. But starting with the statements coming from the White House, the US State Department, they have said that Pakistan needs to earn the money that it gets from Washington. And we also understand that we haven't been getting any money from the US for quite some time now. And that is also the reimbursements that they were supposed to give us, they have been withholding for quite some time. So what exactly do they mean by Pakistan needs to earn its money?
Actually, United States of America, whatever they have been doing in Afghanistan for the last 15, 16 years, there was a really military failure. And they have unsuccessful to control Afghanistan. Whatever is the government there has been installed by the support of United States of America. It is not a popular government. It has no hold on whole of Afghanistan. Rather, more than 40 to plus 40% is still under the Taliban in that group. The failure of Afghanistan, of United States of America, because we have been helping them, no doubt. We have provided all types of facilities to them. There was more than 6,000 attacks from Pakistani soil to Afghanistan using bases of Pakistan officially. And then the only irritant at this moment remain, which is a suspicion in their mind that actually the Haqqani network, there is something standing in Pakistan, although Pakistan has done a lot and clear up all those areas. So Pakistan has also offered that why not you share information with us and we will take action against them wherever they are located. There are no one such type of safe havens in Pakistan at all because we have cleaned up those areas. If there is any and United States have any information and they are not sharing it. They shared only one information that was just a Canadian family entering into from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and then Pakistan has took that action and immediately after that I think sharing was not done. And the whole blame game which is going on because the failure in Afghanistan, Pakistan is being made a scapegoat. So that is one area.
Do you think the rest of the world is also seeing that Pakistan is being made a scapegoat? What do you think the rest of the country is viewing this rather souring of relations between the US and Pakistan? How do you think they're perceiving the bilateral relationship?
Actually, international community is really abundant by the international media, whatever information is coming up internationally. Because Pakistani media itself and our diplomacy and our lobbying internationally, that is not that strong. Therefore, whatever is coming through the media and the news, which is a popular one, is being accepted. But international community is watching that and there is a reaction to it also. We have seen from reaction from China, we have seen from Russia, we have seen from Turkey and latest from
Mr.
Erdogan.
Yes.
I think international media is very much watching that actually because international community has accepted and recognized and rather it has acknowledged Pakistan's sacrifices, whatever Pakistan had done on that side. And Pakistan was successful really eliminating and eradicating terrorism from its own soil to the maximum extent and further efforts are going on. The perception internationally in Europe and America a little bit different because they are feeling that even now that was Pakistan actually is a part of the problem, whatever they're thinking that is it going on in Afghanistan. that maybe there are people, Haqqani network, they are moving across the border and they are taking actions or terrorist activities there. But the same acquisition and same happening is on the other side too. Afghan soil is being used against Pakistan. So that is the area which we have really, after response of the Trump policy which had been announced last in July, August, that was that actually no, United States of America has to do more because Pakistan has done a lot in terms of sacrifices, in terms of loss of life, in terms of losses in economy and bad shape, whatever we are facing, and how many people really we are feeding up the Afghan people on our soil at this moment. And that is what that Pakistan has said, that no, it is done of United States of America and the NATO allies who are in Afghanistan to do more, that the soil of Afghanistan should not be used against Pakistan.
I'm glad that you used this phrase, sir, because this particular phrase of doing more is quite perturbing to the Pakistani establishment as well. And I would like to further take this question to Fahad, where the State Department spokesperson Heather North said that she doesn't want to say that Pakistan can do more, but Pakistan knows what it has to do. Now, we would also like to know, because we have repeatedly said that Pakistan has taken action, decisive action, and have cleared all these so-called safe havens from our territory. We are also in the process of fencing the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So what more can Pakistan really do? That question seems to be left hanging in the air, because it's a vague sort of a statement saying that we know what we need to do, but we are saying that we've already done whatever was possible. So where does that leave us?
Well, there are a couple of issues here. I think first and foremost, you're absolutely right in identifying the fact that the current statements that are emanating from Washington are symptomatic of the United States' own frustration with the end game in Afghanistan, which this was a war that was supposed to have wrapped up by 2014. It's still going on. It's become the longest war in US history. It's outpaced the Vietnam War. It's cost the United States more than the Marshall Plan did back at the beginning of the Cold War. So I think the United States is also in a tough position, because for the longest time you will recall that there was this so-called carrot and stick policy that the United States pursued vis-a-vis Pakistan. I think the United States has realized that it doesn't have enough carrots, nor is its stick big enough to get Pakistan to do what it wants. So I think frustration cuts both ways, because the United States also realizes that its leverage vis-a-vis Pakistan is limited. We back when Salalah happened, the ground lines of communication were very effectively cut off, and it sent a very strong signal to the United States that Pakistan can't and won't be treated like a doormat. I was speaking to somebody the other day. I think the current figure is still that it costs at least $10,000 more per container to be shipped via the Northern Distribution Network as opposed to being trucked through Pakistan. So the United States stands to lose a lot fiscally. 70% of all US supplies to Afghanistan are currently being shipped through Pakistan. 40% of all fuel that is being used in the US war effort is being shipped through Pakistan. So I think, the United States knows that Pakistan is in many ways indispensable, and that's a reality that it doesn't sit very comfortably with. In terms of this current administration, I don't think this New Year tweet that was put out at 4 a.m. by the president should be viewed in isolation. My own opinion is that there's been a graduated sort of chronology of escalation from the United States starting in August 2017, which is when President Trump unveiled his Afghanistan, South Asia policy. Since then, at various levels, from the US National Security Council to Rex Tillerson, to Mike Pence, and now to President Trump, the rhetoric has slowly been, first Pakistan was put on notice, now Pakistan was being asked to do more, and finally we're at this point where it's a level of brinkmanship that is unprecedented if we look at the past few years of Pak-US relations. As far as going forward is concerned, I think there is due recognition on both sides that disengagement is cost prohibitive and best avoided. There are multiple reasons for that. The Pak-US relationship is a long and complicated one. Tremendous sacrifices have been made by Pakistan in fighting this war on terror, which is not a war of Pakistan's making. We continue to be, blamed for the ills of the war, and yet we continue to suffer the most from the fallout that is taking place on our western border. So I think a couple of things have to happen. One is that Pakistan needs to set very clearly its own red lines about what its policy vis-a-vis the United States is going to be in the coming days and months. I think the press release that came out of the NSC meeting day before yesterday is encouraging in that it was both mature and measured in the language that was used. And it is a sign that cooler minds are prevailing in Islamabad, even if they weren't prevailing, if they're not prevailing in DC. And I think another component to bear in mind is, unlike under the Obama administration, when the European capitals rallied around Washington into asking Pakistan to do more. This time the United States is alone. I think there should be cognizance in the fact that Brussels, London, Geneva, other important European capitals are not following Trump's policy of unilateralism, unilateral escalation, because they recognize that this is a dangerous policy that could destabilize not just the region, but the wider sort of Asian security, this balance that exists at the moment. I think there's an opportunity there. Pakistan should cash in on that space, reach out to these capitals, and needs to put out countering extremism and countering terrorism, not because the United States is asking Pakistan to do so, but because Pakistan believes, and we do believe, that it is in our own national interest to not discriminate when it comes to taking out these groups, and to have a clear policy when it comes to fighting terrorism in all its manifestations.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, the president has accused Pakistan of duplicity and lies. And how does one react and respond to such a blatant accusation, sir? And it is hurtful for the people of Pakistan as well as for the government of Pakistan, that when we have bent over backwards in helping and supporting the American war on terror, we are the ones being accused of being duplicitous, when it is purely the US that has been duplicitous in many foreign relations across the world. So is it more of a case of the pot calling the kettle black here, or what's going on, sir?
Yeah, definitely. What about the whole world United States have been doing, and what duplicity they have? What
about Iraq, sir? What's happening in the Middle East right now?
Many places.
When we talk about,
and what about Pakistan even?
And destabilizing the entire region of the Middle East, and then beyond that as well. That seems to be the agenda over here, sir. Yeah. Not pursuing peace.
That is what the perception in the mind of Pakistani people and Pakistani elite and the government also at this moment, that actually the friendship with United States of America has cost more than whatever we got from it. And there are double standards in the United States of America, even dealing with Pakistan on many occasions. But to count all that, specifically in Afghanistan term also, because we cannot fight war at Pakistan territory, which is have to be fought in Afghanistan. So that is the problem. They are actually expecting from Pakistan that Pakistan will play such a role that Pakistan will fight their war at its own territory. And it happened earlier too, and Pakistan has fought that, because after Tora Bora, how many people have been penetrated into it, and how many really act of terrorism has been really done in Pakistan, and how that has been eliminated, and Pakistan has used all types of energies and sources. Further, their expectations further extended that why not, if there is any type of link up which have been maybe in the past, the Haqqani network or elements of Haqqani in Pakistan, but that is no more here.
Wasn't the Haqqani network also being wined and dined in the White House at one point, sir?
Simple.
There are images of the Haqqanis sitting in the Oval Office that are available for everyone to see. Then what are we talking about?
So maybe they're blue-eyed and they're keeping them there.
Well, that's history.
Reason. But the question is that unless political dispensation is given to Taliban, to Pashtun faction, who are a dominant faction in Afghanistan, and the government at the moment is not broad-based, and that is a planted one. And they have no control on Afghanistan. Whatever development has been done in terms of military and raising of military, Afghan National Army and all, they are not capable to controlling all that. So how Pakistan can really play a role beyond borders, whatever going on in Afghanistan, is not possible. So whatever on our soil, we have already declared that we will not let any perpetrator to use our land, our soil against any other country, but talk about Afghanistan. I think that is the policy which is being pursued. There are infiltration from other side. There are other factors also, because there is a dominant factor which is India itself has been given a very, very open role in Afghanistan, because that is what the policy has been declared till 2008, when 123 agreement has been signed between India and United States of America, civil nuclear technology and that collaboration and cooperation is going on. And as a counterweight, India is being used against China, because China is an emerging power, and that is the reason that China itself, whatever policy they have announced in terms of one belt, one road, that is not really acceptable to United States of America. And even before that, United States of America sitting in Afghanistan was not only controlling terrorism or eliminating Al-Qaeda or Taliban and all that. That is your global policy. And that is what they're sitting on the choke point.
But again, sir, they say that Pakistan needs to show that we are sincere in our efforts to crack down on terrorists. Now that again is the same question, that why is our sincerity being questioned?
Further sincerity has to be really required when Pakistan has offered that we can go for eliminating terrorism if you provide us any type of information and share information with us. Pakistan has offered Afghanistan that we can fence the border, and if Afghanistan is not capable to fencing their own side, other side, we are also ready to really contribute for that and play a role. So that is what is the confidence building measures. How we can do further?
That's the million-dollar question, sir, because we, after all that you've said, it seems that in Washington, people are not able to appreciate or understand what Pakistan has done.
I think they are not deliberately appreciating that, because that is what they are knowing. And they are saying, the word itself we read in between, that they are saying Pakistan know and we know what have to be done. The words are on both way.
Right.
Actually, these words are a little bit, I think, whatever was earlier has been lesser down, that Pakistan knows what to do, and of course, we will cooperate with Pakistan and help Pakistan in doing that. And that is the in-between line. So whatever is being said that we will cut off aid to Pakistan and all that, and whatever aid was coming up, of course, that was just a peanut. Not only referring to in terms of aid, that was what the Pakistan has provided, all those facilities in terms of transit facilities and all that.
Absolutely.
And the role Pakistan is playing in the war on terror, that was reimbursement of that amount, or that even that has been stopped.
Right.
So
please continue.
The debt is on US side, not on Pakistani side.
Absolutely, sir. And I hope that they realize that. But one of the things that also came out from Sarah Sanders' press talk was when she reminded Pakistan that President Trump does what he says, and he will follow through on the commitments that he made. So is that really true? Does President Donald Trump really do what he says? Because he said that he was going to pull out the troops from Afghanistan during his election campaign, and he hasn't done that. And there doesn't seem to be any plans of doing that either.
So with President Trump, I think the first and foremost thing to remember is there is certainly a degree of unpredictability with this particular executive in the United States. I think domestically within the United States, the discourse understands and accepts the fact that this is an unstable president who's doing more damage for the United States in terms of reputation, in terms of its international standing, than perhaps any other president so far. I think with Pakistan, the situation is slightly different because what we're seeing is a convergence of not just the executive branch, but also of the Pentagon. So the generals are very much in the driving seat vis-a-vis, because the generals have a lot of skin in the game in Afghanistan, and they don't want to take responsibility for the fact that they've been in this war for 17 years, and they have very little to show for it. They are oblivious to the fact that today the Taliban is a hard reality in Afghanistan that controls well over 60% of the territory, and that the Taliban have a real stake in whatever political settlement takes shape next door. I think for every time that the United States questions Pakistan on its sincerity vis-a-vis countering terrorism and extremism, Pakistan should question the United States' sincerity in countering terrorism and extremism. You will recall that when the coalition forces were still stationed in Afghanistan, and Pakistan started launching the military operations, and going up to the point of Zarb-e-Azab, the entire plan was that Pakistan will we will be the hammer, and that ISAF will serve the anvil on the eastern Afghan side, and they did not do that. As a result, militants they diffused into Afghanistan proper, and they've now mutated into various forms and permutations where they found collaborations with not only the Afghan intelligence agency but other foreign intelligence agencies, and are actually being cultivated to play a destabilizing role. As far as border fencing goes, Pakistan has 3 times the number of security personnel on its side of the border compared to what the Afghans have on their side. It's a fact, a historically documented fact, that the Afghans do not recognize this border. No Afghan leader, be it Hamid Karzai, Abdullah, or Ashraf Ghani, has come out and recognized this border as an international border. So if you have a capital to your west which refuses to accept the legitimacy of a border that you are trying to actually secure, seal, and patrol, that makes any long-term counterinsurgency, counterterrorism effort very difficult to sustain, because obviously it's the flow of humans and other assets which ultimately serves as a spoiler in the region. Another thing to remember is that when the QCG process was taking place, the United States unilaterally droned out Mullah Mansour at a critical moment when talks were actually, the progress was being made. Pakistan was not consulted in this decision. As a result, the QCG process was scuttled. I think it's also worth remembering that when the Murray process was taking place, who broke news of Mullah Umar's death at the critical moment and caused the Taliban to retreat from the negotiating table? As far as the Haqqanis are concerned, it should be known that when the first round of the Murray process took place, the United States was actually in the same room as the Haqqani leadership, and there were 2 members of the Haqqani leadership that were represented in that forum, and the United States was actually interacting with them. Days after that, the United States announced that it was blacklisting Sirajuddin Haqqani onto the global terrorism, its list of global terrorism operatives. So I think as far as, if we're talking about double standards, again, this cuts both ways. And, if the United States wants to remain a committed partner in solving Afghanistan, it'll also have to make some hard choices, really, about what it is and what it is ready to do to facilitate that process. I think something that was mentioned earlier on the show, which hasn't really been caught on the way it should have, is that this is not just about the conflict in Afghanistan. Today, within the United States' security establishment, there is deep-seated reservation about the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Not just CPEC, but also China's rise within the larger, Pan-Asian sort of theater. And the United States recognizes that Pakistan is a linchpin in, not only CPEC, but also as China expands, wants a greater role, say in Afghanistan, in Central Asia, Pakistan is facilitating that role. So I think, while the United States recognizes that there's only so much it can achieve in Afghanistan, it has broader ambitions in terms of containing China's rise. And I think browbeating Pakistan into submission is one tactic which it is trying to use just to reassert its primacy in a theater where it has obviously lost a great deal of legitimacy.
That's the $1 million point right here, because it seems that America's own sincerity needs to be questioned when it when they talk about peace in Afghanistan or even within the broader world. But one of the things that also was said by Ms. Sanders was that Mr. Trump was only re-emphasizing his frustration with Pakistan's Afghan policy. What about America's Afghan policy? Isn't that far more frustrating, sir? What about Pakistan's frustrations with America's Afghan policy? Because they keep backtracking on what their commitments have been. They have promised to take out their troops from Afghanistan a number of times and then backtracked on it. And that's two presidents. Mr. Obama said the same thing, and so did Mr. Trump during the campaign trail, and then they completely took a U-turn on that particular aspect, sir. Isn't that the real issue over here? Isn't that the Afghan war that we are talking about? They want foreign occupation to leave their country? Isn't that what we're talking about?
I don't think so. Because actually, as I've said earlier, the coming into Afghanistan is some other objectives, not only terrorism or Afghan itself. And those objectives are, of course, global, no doubt. And presence in Afghanistan is required. One or other bogey they will really create for that, for their stay there. That's the one thing, to stay there. And that stay actually, how that stay can be really continued and how to go for it, because blaming Pakistan is the only card which United States of America have in their hand most often. And that happened if we look into the Cambodia when they were defeated there in Vietnam.
Black Hawk Down.
The Black Hawk Down. So the same scapegoat they were trying to, if Pakistan would have been Cambodia.
But it was Pakistan who saved the American troops in that particular operation.
Of course. And that is what actually the frustration is the on other side, the failure of United States of America in Afghanistan. But that failure is a failure, but really that is a failure? The failure is inside of that there is no peace in Afghanistan, no doubt. Are the United States of America was for peace in Afghanistan or stability in Afghanistan? That is another question. I don't think
That's
so.
what they claim, sir.
They claim only. What they have earlier declared, that we will rebuild, nation building, we are coming for to reconstruct Afghanistan and all that, after eliminating Taliban or Al-Qaeda and all that. What they have done on that front? What they have trillions of dollars if they have spent standing there, living there in Afghanistan and keeping their forces, if hardly 10% of that has been spent on Afghanistan, Afghanistan would have been really rebuilt and survived. I don't think that is the objective. The objective is, of course, different, and that is what is being perceived by international community also. So that is not only, if we say, in terms of rise of China and countering China, of course, that is objective. But the center point is CPAC is the center point in terms of lane which can provide what Soviet Russia have been not really successful to reach to the warm waters with force, all type of force. China is reaching with soft power, and now Russia is also behind it. And that is what actually
is the real issue.
Is the real issue, which is
and we are all pinching around
the
it.
United States of America, how their policy is going to fail in this region, and they have to one day leave.
Well, sir, let's also talk about Pakistan's response to the president's tweet, and there was a parliamentary committee's response that you were also mentioning. But beyond that, they also said that the next meeting on the US's allegations against Pakistan will include military leadership. Why was it missing in the first instance, and then what's the significance of the military leadership being a part of the National Security Committee?
Well, I think there's no doubt about the fact that the military is a key stakeholder in any sort of decision when it comes to national security. After all, they are the ones who are fighting this it's the largest inland counterinsurgency operation that has been waged anywhere in the world. In Zarb-e-Azab, North Waziristan has been reclaimed. So kudos to the military and the civilian leadership for being able to come together and successfully execute this operation. I think in terms of the relationship with the United States, it's also complicated because there's the diplomatic and strategic relationship within that as a component of that is the fact that the military is also a recipient of hardware supplies. So it's important for them to be a part of any conversation that is going to unfold on the Pak-US front. Also because you can't really have this conversation and divorce it from the thornier issue of drone strikes, which has been, of course, a bilateral irritant for the past 7 odd years. And with what we've seen with President Trump is that this policy of escalation is translating into the CIA's program of expanding drone operations in Pakistan. I think as late as late November, there was a strike that took out operatives on the Pak-Afghan border. Pakistan, of course, for its part, has reiterated time and again that it has very clear red lines when it comes to the use of drones, and it will not tolerate any violation of its sovereignty. But I think that's a message which could be reinforced a little more. I think that sovereignty is sacrosanct, and that Pakistan will not permit any drone strikes on its territory, especially as long as the United States views its relationship with Pakistan through this prism of conditionality. I think it's very important for any sovereign nation state to lay out the terms of reference of its foreign relations.
Engagement.
And I think with the United States, especially so because under the Trump administration, a concerted decision, there's been a deliberate decision to covertize the United States' engagement with Pakistan and Afghanistan even further. I mean, this was always a very covertized space, but you will recall that from President Trump's speech in Fort Myer in August, there was no timeline given for the withdrawal of Afghan troops. There was no clear figure that was given of the number of troops that would be stationed, remain stationed in Afghanistan. Also, no mention of contractors or outsourcing the war to external forces. So there is, I think part of that is also the United States hedging itself against domestic opposition. It doesn't want to be accountable tomorrow when American taxpayers turn around and say, what have you achieved in Afghanistan? From that point of view, it's very easy for the United States then to look around and say it's all Pakistan's fault, scapegoating Pakistan for America's own misadventures in this war because of its lack of strategic thinking and the lack of having realistic policy goals in Afghanistan. I think one of the goalposts that the United States has, which is at odds with Afghanistan's current reality, is that the United States does not realize that any sort of lasting regional settlement will also need input from other key regional stakeholders. So Iran, Russia, and China are all extremely important in a conversation when it comes to Afghanistan. The United States, of course, has been trying to exclude these players because it has its own sort of formula of having the Quad arrangement in which they've sort of accepted China's role, but are very averse to letting Moscow and Tehran have a seat at the table. On the other hand, Pakistan, of course, has reservations about having New Delhi, sit on the table in the Heart of Asia process. So these are some discrepancies that will have to be reconciled with. I think Pakistan, for its part, should continue to maintain that it remains heavily invested in Afghan peace and reconciliation efforts, particularly that are Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. I think it's very important at this point in time for Kabul not to outsource peace and reconciliation to the United States. That also will require Kabul to get its own house in order. The government in Afghanistan at the moment is fractured and divided. They are, having their own intrigues and scandals on a daily basis. There's a sharp rift between the Abdullah and the Ashraf Ghani camps. Parliamentary elections that were scheduled to be held in July of 2018. I think the last news that I heard was those have been delayed because the adequate ballots have not been prepared. So there are logistical handicaps that stem from the systemic dysfunction of Kabul itself. So again, multiple things have to happen. We need to recognize that there are many moving parts to the story, and it's not just a Pakistan-run show.
Absolutely. That's very, very significant points that you've raised, Fahad. Very good points. Now, let's also talk about the international reaction to President's tweet against Pakistan. We had China, first of all, coming in and saying that Pakistan's sacrifices are second to none as far as fighting terrorism across the world is concerned. And so has Mr. Erdogan, President Erdogan of Turkey, also expressed solidarity. He called up President Mamnoon Hussain and said that Pakistan's sacrifices are historic. in the fight against terrorism. So when there are such countries that are supporting Pakistan, and indeed this view is also held by many others who have not yet voiced their opinions on the matter, why is it that we are still being used as a punching bag? Why is it that the US cannot see that the way forward is cooperation rather than coercion? Sir.
I think that is what actually Trump has promised in his election campaign and after that also. Wanted to really show something to the domestic audience also. And the other thing is midterm elections are coming up in the United States of America. And you know the importance of midterm. Itself, if Democrats really gain in that, that will be a problem for Trump itself. To avoid that and give this type of really impression that United States of America is really successful on that front, that is a message for the domestic audience. Not only that, why actually that is that itself international community is silent. As we see, other major powers are not really coming up in that way, recognizing the sacrifices of Pakistan. But internally, I think they do. What actually co-sponsored itself in the United Nations, whatever we have moved related to Jerusalem, that is there, the Pakistan strength.
So that has also pinched the US.
That has also pinched the US.
Well, they deny it though. They say it's got nothing to do with that.
They are not, but there is a link to it.
Definitely.
Because immediately after this happened.
Absolutely, sir.
So there is, I think, a linkage with the factor. It's not just a coincidence. And that factor itself, that the Pakistan opinion in favor of Pakistan is really there. And that is what pinching United States of America. And the other side, Pakistan is moving toward, because even United States of America cannot afford to really distance Pakistan, because there is many strategic importance of Pakistan in terms of whatever they are in Afghanistan and doing in Afghanistan. Without Pakistan help and all that was not possible. And further is not possible if Pakistan really stop whatever has been done earlier. The NATO supplies have been stopped, and you know what happened to the United States of America. So that realization is there. But side by side, United States of America wants that Pakistan should do something more to help them really stabilize Afghanistan, or painting it as a success in Afghanistan. They can have a maybe safe exit, but that may not be the objective. I think instability is favorable to United States of America in Afghanistan and in Pakistan too. And that is happening in Iran nowadays. Who is behind that? International community knows. So that is what the ultimate objective. Instability, but not instability to the extent that fragile Pakistan may not be acceptable to all, because that will be catastrophic for many states. So instability is acceptable to the extent that may be economic, that may be political, that all fine. That is helping to their policy, and that is what they are doing. And scapegoating Pakistan also favor their policy, and that is their objective. They are achieving that. And Trump, I think, yes, unpredictable, no doubt, because many places he have changed his all positions, and whatever declared earlier has totally altogether changed. And even that was a question in the White House by the journalist, that what actually happened to Trump, that at the time of 4 a.m. he woke up and he giving this message.
Brainwave at 4 in the morning.
Are they really sensible for that?
Well, sir,
so that is what actually is being projected. And there is, let's say, there's a latest, whatever are the polls itself, the popularity of Trump in the United States of America, that means hardly 30%.
But the president says that that's all because of the fake news media that is bringing him down.
But that is what they have to say.
Right, sir. I wanted to bring this question, sir, to Fahad. How much of it is really about Mr. Trump's domestic troubles when we talk about the Russian investigation? And the latest in that series is Mr. Trump calling his very dear friend Steve Bannon as having lost his mind after having lost his job. So what kind of comments are these coming from the leader of the free world when we talk about Mr. Trump's stability?
I think it was only today that a Yale University professor of psychiatry released a report saying that President Trump is mentally unstable and unfit to lead the United States. President Trump is actually, I think on the 12th of Jan, he's up scheduled for his first full physical examination as President of the United States. They have an annual medical checkup that they're supposed to go through. Not that that's the main point here, but the fact that these are certainly questions that have been picked up within the domestic discourse in the United States. As far as I think this has been a age-old tactic of using foreign policy to divert attention from domestic troubles. I fully agree with sir what you said about the idea of limited instability, low-level instability. There's a term for this, controlled chaos, which the United States has been using to manage this a certain dynamic of instability in Afghanistan. It's not too dissimilar from what we've heard from the East about bleeding Pakistan vis-a-vis 1,000 cuts. Because the point is that a strong, prosperous and stable Pakistan is beneficial for the region, but a strong, stable Pakistan is also dangerous for countries and establishments that have designs against Pakistan. So these are things I think we should just keep in mind going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's also talk about Khaja Asif's statements. One of the things that were quite pertinent, which he said, is that history teaches us not to trust the United States. A very profound statement coming from our foreign minister. Beyond that, he also ventured forward to give an explanation to that tweet. He said, you have asked us what did we do? A dictator surrendered before the US on a single phone call. Our country witnessed the worst bloodbath. You carried out 57,800 attacks on Afghanistan from our bases. Your forces were supplied arms and explosives through our soil. Thousands of our civilians and soldiers became victims of the war initiated by you. How would you take this particular statement and response by Pakistan's foreign minister to President Trump's tweet?
I think these are the facts, undeniable facts. So what really sacrifices and losses Pakistan has really suffered, that is unprecedented in the history. And what Pakistan has really provided all types of facilities to the United States of America, that is also unprecedented.
And sir, we're almost out of time, so I just want one last question. Statement came out from the DGISPR that in case of US action, Pakistan is ready, but we're still friends.
Yeah.
Because so if you could elaborate on that, sir, just very briefly, because we're almost out of time.
I don't think that is going to happen, because United States of America knows the strength of Pakistan. And that is what has been really communicated.
Articulated by the DGISPR.
Articulated by DGISPR. I don't think that type of adventurism will go against Pakistan. That is again the limited instability and all that, and
controlled chaos.
On economic front especially, right. That is maybe coming up. Maybe some more number in terms of drone attacks and all that, but not beyond whatever happened in that.
No red lines are going to be crossed, is what you perceive, sir.
If red line crosses, maybe response will come.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and in conclusion, we have always said that America and Pakistan have enjoyed a very long relationship with its ups and downs. Sometimes it reminds one of a bad marriage where they're still together because of the kids. On that note, and with hope that we have better relations in the future, it's goodbye.